Muy buenas tardes,
Good afternoon to everyone gathered here.
hermanos que están aquí. Hay algunos que tenía años de no ver.
There are many I haven't seen in years.
Quiero decir de que
Before
antes de
speaking about Rubén Guerrero,
palabras
I want to first
sobre el
thank
hermano
God
Rubén Guerrero, primero quiero darle gracias a Dios y alabado sea el Señor
and to praise Him for the many
por
things
tantas cosas que
He has for us.
preparado Él, pero más que todo a nosotros.
But more than anything, we Nicaraguans
Nosotros nicaragüenses
must
debemos
give
un gran honor y gracias al Señor
special
por habernos
honor
enviado
and thanks to God
al
for
hermano
sending
Rubén
us
Guerrero.
Brother Rubén Guerrero.
Ustedes no me conocen.
Many of you don't know me. Most of you.
Yo fui un soldado de
I
la
was a
resistencia
soldier in the
nicaragüense
Nicaraguan resistance. I am a
y
doctor,
conocí al hermano
and I met
Rubén Guerrero
Brother Rubén Guerrero for the first time after the bombings that caused many deaths.
Llegábamos ahí a ver quién
We all got there to see who was dead, who was wounded,
cómo nos
and
preparábamos
how we would
para
prepare
ciertas emboscadas.
ambushes to protect ourselves from further
Me
attacks.
sorprendió ver una
And I was
persona
surprised to hear a man with a Mexican American accent handing out gifts to orphan children who were there.
que estaban ahí. Y yo no podía creer
And I couldn't believe
que una persona
that a
que no
person
estuviera
who was
involucrada
not involved in the
en otro
conflict
país
from another country
estuviera dándole regalos
would be
a los
given
niños,
presents to children
estuviera rezando por
and would be praying
ese día
for our
entregamos
dead.
como a 17 en una pista.
That day we buried 17 soldiers
Y esa
along the
fue la
trail.
primera vez que lo vi. Fueron
And
los
that was the
primeros
first time I
años.
saw him
Pero
in
de
the
ahí me
initial
llamó la
years of the
atención
war.
que
And
cuando
that caught my
salí con
attention
ellos y
because when
muertos
we were
de
evacuating the
Nicaragua
dead
hacia
and the
Honduras,
wounded from Nicaragua to Honduras,
ahí me encontraba
there he was, that Ruben Guerrero guy,
orando,
praying and telling the soldiers to look up to heaven
hacia el
and
cielo,
pray
que
to
viéramos a
God.
Dios. Le soy franco, muchas
I'll
veces
be honest, many times I saw him and I told myself, this is contrary to what we teach soldiers. We usually teach them not to look back, and if they are shot in the leg, to keep fighting. That if they kill 10 people that morning, they had to kill 20 in the afternoon, because we were desperately wanting to win the war. And many of you here today know that's how we trained. Unfortunately for us, this was something we had to live through our youth. Those were the first years of the war. Later, when we had some medical clinics, a little more modern, I found myself asking the question, how are we going to care for our wounded soldiers after they bravely fought against the enemy, against the helicopters, and against the best Russian weapons that unfortunately our enemies had? The Katyushkas, rocket launchers, helicopters, powerful landmines that could destroy a 25 to 30 ton tank. You can imagine what that would do to a person. And they had placed over 100,000 landmines at the border. How could we receive these wounded soldiers who had lost an eye, a foot, or a hand? Because of the medical limitations, we, as doctors, knew they were going to die. And man, I'd run into this guy again, Rubén Guerrero. He helped me to treat the soldiers and help them in their dying moments. This is something that maybe very few people know about Rubén Guerrero. How many of our soldiers he helped to die. And this is something great that today I understand. So this is where I saw the need. I saw him very small and all by himself. This Mexican-American accent was the only voice heard in those clinics in the mountains, on his knees by the hammocks, because we couldn't have beds for the wounded, asking God to receive the soul of that would soon leave this world. That remains etched in my memory. And I personally felt it as a need, that as well as treating the wounds, we had to treat the souls of these soldiers that were going to die, to give their life leaving behind children, wives, and mothers on this earth. Under very unique circumstances, I had the opportunity to travel to the United States, where I had a meeting with President Ronald Reagan. And what did I ask him? Weapons, missiles. I wanted bigger missiles. As all of you here who fought know, what would happen when we faced those helicopters and we didn't have the right missiles? We felt chills down our spines because we knew we were going to die. Ronald Reagan agreed to give us more weapons. And at that moment, don't ask me how, except now I know that it was the work of God. But one day I received an invitation at the hotel where I was staying, and they said I had supper with a man named Billy Graham. I'll be honest with you, and you have to remember that like most of you, I come from a country where we grew up in the Catholic Church. I didn't know who Billy Graham was. That night, I found myself having supper with him, his wife, and his son, Franklin Graham.